Well, today's topic, if you didn't know it already, you know it now. It's called soul food. And of course, the first thing that I think of is stuff on the Food Network. My mother was maybe not galloping, but a gourmet, and she used to like to take classes and then come home and experiment with me. I was 15 or 16 at the time, and the only one left in the house to play with. And we would read Julia Child's recipes and make things like Eggs Benedict from scratch, meaning the first thing you do is make English muffins. and then, all of that fancy stuff. Those were great times. We had a few different renditions of wood and gas combination Crawford antique stoves. The regular one was just across the room. But we always had some really interesting wood cooking stove with burners on top of it and an oven and chrome. So we made those English muffins in the holidays on a really fashionable stove too. So soul food actually today is about something a little bit different. And that's because what we talk about around here is always metaphorical, it's always philosophical, it's always spiritual. And the fact of the matter is that what we each hunger for on a soul level is not exactly the same, because none of us are. There are as many renditions of soul food as there are of people, of souls on the planet at any time. So what that means is that what works for one of you that really satisfies you is different from what works for another person next to you, perhaps. So what we hunger for is different because who we are is different. Now, of course, I almost went down another road looking at all of the ways that we hunger similarly. And I was going to put Maslow's hierarchy of needs up there. And I decided, no, we're not going to do that today. Because what really came forward was the beauty of the fact that we're not all the same. We are many souls with many different hungers. We're no two alike. And yet we're also all one. And there is a beauty in that. There's a beauty in that formula, in that fact about all of us. I want to share something from Ernest Holmes. He's our founder of the Science of Mind and Spirit. And there's a chapter in the textbook on unity and multiplicity. And he wrote about this topic often. He says, the furtherance of evolution depends on our ability to sense a unity with nature and her forces. When the knowledge of this unity comes alike to all, the tread of armies will cease, and the bugle call will echo the soft notes of brotherly love. Isn't that beautiful? This idea that we're all different and we're all one. If we only contemplated that particular set of ideas daily, we would absolutely achieve enlightenment. We're all different and we're all one. So the trick is, how do we get along? How do we access that brotherly, sisterly love? How do we live in such a way that we are both fully satisfied and fulfilled? And our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our friends are as well. It is the transcendence from the either or, black or white, us or them mindset to that of oneness and unity that allows everyone to be fulfilled, every soul to be fed, every hunger to be addressed on every level. So you can see, if we went through the hierarchy of needs, we would be here for a while. And what we focus on here most of all is that at the center of it, that the fact that there is a foundation that's being that's being addressed, that the fact that our basic needs are being met, for our physiological ones and for our safety and well-being, we get to come to this place where we focus a lot here on belonging, on the giving and receiving of love. And we move towards mastery, discovering who we have come here to be, which is this language that we're all sharing lately, and self-actualization. So this idea that there are more than one type of soul, that there is more than one type of soul, more than one type of hunger, and that we're all one, and that there's some way that we can satisfy both our own hunger and that of others is very appealing. There used to be a time when anything that was idealistic was looked down upon, that utopians were made fun of, that those transcendentalists were laughed at, because the idea that that was possible seemed foolish, but it doesn't to as many people anymore. In fact, I think we were looking at a documentary a couple weeks ago that spoke of something called the Venus Project, and it was a vision from very professional minds with a lot of facts to back it up, of a way of being, of civilization, which was built around these same ideas. All needs met. That is not only possible, but that's how nature created everything. So if you'll join with me on this exploration, I have a feeling that that might be true. Teachers of nonviolent communication or compassionate communication talk about this idea that however we're acting out, if something's flying out of our mouths without, checking in anywhere first, or if we're going about doing things without a whole lot of forethought, and perhaps we're finding that we're having to clean up some messes, or maybe some people have left us, seemingly in the dust or in our lives. If there's any upset because the way that we are behaving and communicating is sort of bumpy in some way, it's because we have unmet needs. And what that means is that there's something that we require that is not happening for us. Now, what I'd like to do today is say that we're going to take this concept of an unmet need and call it soul hunger. Okay? So, unmet need for today equals soul hunger. So, if your soul's stomach is growling, right? Well, then you might growl too. If something within you feels amiss, then there is a natural tendency to reach for the fulfillment of that thing, to satisfy it. And that's not a bad thing. The trouble comes when we don't know what our needs are. The difficulty comes when we don't know how to express them. And guess what? For a lot of us, as we're finding out, we may add to that by saying, you know what, this whole idea of looking at what you need and how to express it is foolishness. There's work to be done. There's too much important stuff going on outside that door. We don't have time for this. It's possible that most, if not all of us, got some kind of message in the name of taking care of us, of our well-being, that said, we don't have time for this, or that's silly. We need to focus on this other thing instead. So we're born naturally, as you can hear out there, to express our need, to just, I need it. When you're a baby, whatever you need, you cry, right? And the parents know exactly, well, this cry means gas, this one means hunger, this means potty, this means I'm sleepy, that means I want some. Somehow, we instinctively know how to read those signals. As we grow, however, we have an opportunity to develop a more sophisticated vocabulary, a more evolved way of communicating what our needs are. What happens, though, is that initially we're brought to this place of function, of basic, we're here, automatically. We have instinct, we have intuition, we may not yet know how to use it, And we have these basic things that start us off automatically in life, like the crying baby, like the real obvious signals of hunger and pain and whatever fear or excitement that we have. Beyond that, there's more. And this is where we get to step on this path of evolution. The thing is that what's beyond that involves consciousness, and it involves choice. Ernest Holmes said that intuition is instinct, but there are two things added to it. Instinct plus self-awareness and self-choice. So, unlike something that just says, with non-verbally, I'm going to fly that way. Oh, it's time to go here. It's time to do this or that. We have those same natural urges and instinctive directives, and we get to decide what we think they mean and then choose whether or not to listen and do anything with them or not, and in which case, what? So from that point forward, when we start off, with well, here you go, now it's all yours from this point on. We have what's commonly called free will, volition, choice, and we have self-awareness. And we get to decide when we get signals what to do about them. One of the things that happens is sometimes we learn through cultural conditioning or circumstances not to listen to that voice. We may learn that it's not that important. We may learn that there's something that's seemingly more important. And so we don't listen to it. Now, the funny thing, and sometimes it's not so funny, is that it'll just simply find another way to get your attention. Right? We've heard that before. In any case, soul hunger is something that's built in. It is something that starts out very naturally as instinct. And as we become self-aware, and then at some point aware that we have choices, and at some point we start practicing combining those things and making choices with intention, we get to really participate in our evolution, our development, the unfolding of our experience. We learn, if we're fortunate enough, we learn, I don't want to say fortunate enough, we learn when it's the right time for each one of us to discover that our thoughts are creative and that we actually have even more of a role in what unfolds before us. We get to, if we've been in any of these classes or groups and places like this, discover that what we focus upon grows, that where we put our energy and our attention is amplification, is multiplication, is division, is more. So if we go back to this place where we arrived first as an instinctive man or woman, with all the basic functions intact, and the rest is up to us, then we start to have this first moment of self-reflection. I am. Or Shakespeare, I think, therefore I am. And then we start to recognize that when we have a gut feeling, we have a thought about it, we have a choice about it, then if we've been to a class or a workshop or read a book or heard it somewhere or watched The Secret or What the Plea, we might say, oh, okay, so in this moment when I get to decide what this signal means for me and what I'm going to do with it, I also know that my thought and my feeling is creative. And so, wow, that's a lot of choosing to do. Those are a lot of choices to make. We develop an art, a mastery of these, so that through practice, there's not as much in between us and how we were really made to operate. And that means there's not as much in between us and all that is available to us to experience. We may have to remind ourselves along the way quite a few times that this is not a foolish pursuit. And it's my intention by the time we're finished together today to be more sure about that than we might have been an hour ago. More sure, and I'll tell you why. This concept, again, that we are not only each individuals, but we're all one, is so amazing. It is like an insurance policy. If you say, if you pretend that you made all of this, and you say, I'm going to make these people who are all different, and I'm going to give them also the awareness that they're all connected, and see what happens. Well, what happens is that we discover we need one another. We discover that not only are our own needs and desires vital, but that something made us together. And that part of the way that those needs are fulfilled is in what we do together. That everything that we require, because it's part of the plan too, is within reach. So there's this interesting idea that we're supposed to identify and pay attention to our soul hunger. Not just so that we can have full bellies. Not at all. If we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or if you simply listen to a public service announcement about how children can't possibly learn in school if they haven't had breakfast, it's that simple. When we are fed, when we acknowledge our own hunger, and we accept what it is that we require to be whole, we can turn towards one another in that wholeness and do great things. This is a drum that I beat often from many different angles because it is at the core of healing what's going on out there. As a matter of fact, the core of healing what's going on out there is to heal our core. And the word heal comes from whole, and whole, of course, means completion, completeness, that we actually already come from that. Questions like, who am I, and why am I here, and what does it all mean, they're not new, and they are actually really important. Because in order for us to accomplish this thing, in order for us to know what we desire, in order for us to reach that wholeness, in order to be able to turn to one another in wholeness, we've got to understand how we're wired, what we require, what we need in order to be fulfilled so that we can go on to other things besides hungering or just survival. You know, we're beyond that now. We're in a different stage of things now. So, how do we identify what we need? Well, there's some funny ways to think about it. The first would be the types of soul food that just fly out of your mouth. I don't know about you, I made this little list. I thought, so how do they show up that way? Well, maybe you or someone you know walks into the room and says, this place is a mess. It's hot in here. I'm hungry. They should have provided snacks. And so on and so forth, right? There's things that just, okay, one way to identify what's missing is to just go ahead and blurt it out. You blurt out an observation of what's not there. Great. Well, that's a start. It might offend a few people if someone else in the room hasn't done their inner work yet, and they're like, oh, I just changed the thermostat, or we just cleaned it, or we were about to clean it, or, or the committee decided not to do snacks, or the snacks are coming, or whatever it is. You see how we start to interact? Because maybe some of the other needs come from a place a little bit deeper than here, right here, let's say. Here are the other ones. You walk into a room silently, and people are talking, and things are going on, and something in your gut says, I don't know. Maybe the hair stands up on the back of your neck. Maybe you just want to run. Maybe you're drawn to someone. Maybe you walk up and meet someone for the first time, and you feel like you've known them forever. Those are the gut feelings. Those are the things that either say, something is missing that I need in order to function, or something wonderful is revealing itself to me to be next in my experience. It's not always glass half empty. It's not always pushed by pain. Sometimes it's the glass is half full. And I think I know where more of that is. Maybe you're pulled by a vision, as Michael Beckwith says. So sometimes your soul hunger is telling you that you're ready for something more. There's another way that it can show up, and we've had some fun with this one lately. I know I did. Is that if you can't say it with your mouth, then you can't say it with your gut, then you might have it happen with your eye or your ear or your knee or your arm or whatever. Some people go on vacation and slip on the ice and break the wrist in their ankle and have a totally unexpected experience. We were talking about something like that before celebration this morning. There are ways that your body can communicate what it needs if you don't listen to your gut and you haven't been watching what's coming out of your mouth. And of course, we know how much more fun it is to do all of this on purpose, with intention. How much more fun we are. How much more fun we are to have around when we do it that way. One of the things that stands in the way of this is this idea that it is foolish or selfish to have this pursuit at all. But it's not. If we look at what's going on in the world right now, and go back to this idea of unmet needs, think about it. Think about it. If everyone's needs were met, would they have to take or overtake? Would they have to steal or hoard or hide? Would they have to withhold? Would they have to search and go hungry? Would they not have education? Would they not have housing? Would they not have food? Is it possible that if we really, truly, right here in this room and in rooms like it, learn how to take care of fulfilling our own needs first, that we would not be able to turn towards everyone else in our community, in our county, in our state, in our country, in the world, in some way, in the recognition of our own wholeness. Because what happens is when we show up as whole, when we know that's who we are, and we allow ourselves to receive the gifts and accept the gifts of that, we show up as a representation of that to our neighbors, to our friends, to our families, the people in our community, the ones we know and the ones we don't know. There's a difference between walking into a room or an organization or whatever in a place of need and a place of fullness. There's a big difference. I spend time during the week with people who go to hospitals and visit doctors, and nurses come visit them, and physical therapists come visit them. And sometimes it's so obvious when a person is in a place of needing to receive. And how beautiful it is that others are inspired to be in a place of giving for that very need. This is another drum that I beat on often, because I don't know about you, but when I went to a guidance counselor my freshman year in college, I remember I was very clear about what I wanted to do. It was a lot like what I'm doing right now. And they said, oh no, those are not marketable skills. You really ought to try this or that. And those things were completely unrelated to who I was or am, and what I'm capable of even. They were not related. I think they know a little better now. That besides marketable skills, there has to be a connection between those and who you are. And the idea is that nature has created everything perfectly, with needs and their fulfillment in close proximity to one another. One of those examples in nature, in the environment, is that 3 feet away from poison ivy is its antidote. Too bad I can't remember what that is. The point is that 3 feet or an arm's length away from anyone or anything in nature is what else it requires. Its balance, its counterpart. Maybe that's true about each of us. Maybe it is. At the very least, perhaps it is true about every soul hunger that we have, about every requirement that we have, about every desire. Within our reach, when that moment comes, is whatever we need. Absolutely. So how do you know that your soul is hungry? Well, I think we do know. I think we know that already. I think that we know when our soul is hungry, and we know what it's hungry for. And what we really need to be sure of is that it is A-OK to acknowledge that and take care of it. Because it allows us to show up as the whole beings that we were designed to be, as better friends, as better spouses, as better sons and daughters and sisters and brothers, when we allow ourselves to identify and answer that hunger. And because we're one, because we're all one, the other thing that happens is that something happens for the whole when we take care of ourselves as individuals. So I wanted to end this by giving everybody a permission slip. I'm keeping one for myself. And Rick is going to pass these out. You know, when you decide that maybe it isn't a decision. But how neat it is when you'd like to go somewhere or you don't want to do something, to have a note from your teacher or a note from your doctor giving you permission. So this is a note from your Creator giving you permission. And this is what it says. Your permission slip, a note from your Creator. Your soul hunger is divinely made to guide you to your soul food. Your soul food is always within reach, wherever you are. Your fulfillment makes you the nicest guy or gal you could be. Oh. Your fulfillment makes you the nicest brother or sister you could be. Real. And that, my friends, is the big plan. The caveat is that you have to choose it yourself, or you wouldn't be free. And so it is.